So I want to start today with a quote. And we've used this quote, we actually used this during the teacher's blessing. The Greek philosopher Heraclitus has been quoted as saying, "No man ever steps in the same river twice." You may have heard this before. Because it is not the same river, and he's not the same man. So I invite you, as I talk today, consider your own favorite spot by the water. What does that look like and feel like for you? How does it change each time you visit it? And more importantly, how do you change? I have a favorite spot at a creek. It's just downhill from where I live. And the first time I purposely visited it was to mark the end of a meaningful experience. I needed a ritual. And I have returned many times since then. And I marvel at the changes I see. This past spring, it had rained for a week straight, and there were waterfalls I didn't know existed. Right now, the water is receding, and the water is full of floating leaves. Today, I'm also thinking about a different body of water, and I invite you, if you would like to switch gears with me, I am thinking of a swimming pool. I'm thinking of a 25-yard pool. It used to sit on the corner of Dorchester and 53rd in Hyde Park on the south side of Chicago where I grew up. No longer is there. But I was attending a day camp. And somewhere during that summer, a swim instructor declared that I would never learn how to swim. I have no idea what they saw or didn't see. And yet, as a 7-year-old, I suddenly became a non-swimmer. And then that summer, I laugh at this now. It was not funny when I was 7. The pool became more and more out of reach. There was one day, even though I couldn't swim, I still loved free swim, and we were promised a 2-hour free swim, which is a child's joy. One day. And the reason for this extra long free swim that I was so looking forward to was that part of the groups, I actually think it was the boys, got to go to a baseball game. So they were going to go see the Cubs play. And I didn't even question why some were going and some were not. That's another subject for another sermon. But imagine my dismay, my horror, when I opened the swim bag and found my brother's suit. My suit was at Wrigley Field. So I was sentenced to the sidelines of the pool for that entire 2-hour swim. I am fortunate. I had other opportunities, many opportunities to learn how to swim. I lived half a mile from Lake Michigan, so there was no question that I was going to learn how to swim. And I had patient teachers, unlike the first one, who deemed me a non-swimmer. And when we moved out to the western suburbs of Chicago a few years later, my siblings and I all joined the swim team. Yet I think about this experience. We're embarking on this month's theme of change. And I think about this in the context of change. When my kids were in middle school, and I'm going to pause for a moment, I'm going to just name something that's happening for me today. My kids are now all technically young adults. My youngest is 18 today. And I'm sure she'll show up in other sermons. When they were in middle school, the principal of that middle school incorporated Carol Dweck's work. Is there anyone here who has done any work with growth mindset, fixed mindset? This is something I had also read and became familiar with in a different fashion when they were in school. When Dweck and her colleagues started this research more than 30 years ago, they noticed that some students would bounce back from failure while others would continue to be stuck by even small setbacks like finding your brother's suit in your swim bag. They attributed this to the underlying belief system that we have. We also know more now about the plasticity of the brain. And they coined terms like growth mindset, meaning that we can learn new things even when we don't know how to do them today. And they also captured the idea of a fixed mindset, which could be characterized by my swim instructor: you will never be able to do that. We need to be able to give ourselves the grace to learn with mistakes, hence the UUA's Common Read title, for example, Mistakes and Miracles. We need lots of practice, and sometimes we need to be able to take 2 steps back before we can take a step forward. Change and growth can be uncomfortable. I heard someone make a suggestion, and I hear this a lot in different contexts, but we need to embrace being uncomfortable, especially in this time. It can also be messy. Over the decades, I've taught people how to swim. I want to say, take that, swim instructor. I've taught both kids and adults, and I know how hard it is to lean back in the water for the first time. But maybe I can tell someone, let me put my hand on your back. Can I support you? Or maybe I can say, here's the wall. Hold on for just a moment. And there are many flotation devices that can also help us get there together. There's a well-known quote, and I'll ask it and see if anyone here is familiar. It is, be the change you wish to see in this world. Does anyone want to, who has been attributed? Who? Gandhi, yeah. I'm a researcher, so I'm gonna get a little research geeky on you. It is typically, if you do a Google search, Gandhi's name will show up, and it could have been something, but there are very well-researched blog posts that can't seem to find the actual writing where he posted that. I mean, not posted, he wrote that. It is a quote that is often used to encourage people to model the change that they wish to see. And it also goes hand in hand with the wisdom that we can't change other people. I have tried, I can attest to this. There's also a theory that it was not actually said by Gandhi. He said many things that were similar to that. But there is writings by a teacher in Brooklyn. There was a project that their school was doing. Arlene Lawrence, Brooklyn and New York High School in 1970 wrote those words. So whoever did end up saying this quote, I want to share a story from Gandhi, about Gandhi, that models this quote or exemplifies it. And some of you may have heard this before. A mother and her son came to visit Gandhi. The mother was seeking advice, and she waited in line for several hours along with hundreds of other people. And she wanted Gandhi to talk to her son about his habit of eating too many sweets. And they got up, it was their turn, and she explained why she was there and said, would you please talk to my son? And Gandhi said, will you come back in 2 weeks? And so they did, and all along the mother was wondering, why this amount of time? Why not now? When they returned 2 weeks later, Gandhi spoke directly to the boy and said, stop eating so many sweets. And he said, of course, I will try, I will do my best. And as they were leaving, the mother thanked Gandhi for his wisdom and then asked, why did you need the time? Why couldn't you have given us this counsel 2 weeks ago? Gandhi replied that he himself had to work on cutting back on his sweets. and he felt it was important for him to be able to model the behavior that he was asking of someone else. So this story lends an important lesson. The task of change starts with us. Yet, are there ways that we can embark on this journey of change in community with others? I think so, and I think that is often the reason, that is one of the many reasons we show up here in this community. I would like to argue that we need to seek change and growth in ourselves while in connection and conversation with others. And I'll offer up 2 tools that I often turn to do this. And that is the questions we ask and the stories that we share with each other. Questions like Pablo Neruda's question poetry can make us pause and think about things differently. I have to name that every time I have used this book, and it was one of, I believe, the 3 books, or the three books that were published posthumously. They were found, manuscripts were found on his desk after his death. Questions can make space for possibilities. One of my favorite questions that I don't always like to hear when someone else is asking it of me is, what would it be like if? So in a recent experience of mine, clinical pastoral education, or CPE, many of you may hear that. It's a requirement for my seminary journey, as well as the requirements within this denomination. And I had an experience this past year with a unit, and my supervisor there would often start our conversations or bring this question up. And one day I was sharing with her that I had been interrupted during a check-in at a support group. And I was trying to figure out what the next step was. I didn't feel safe. And her question to me was, well, what would it be like if you shared with the leader how it felt to be cut off? Her question gave me pause, and of course, in the moment, I'm not going to do that. But she was trying to say I was not likely in that group the only one who felt that way. How could I make it a better place? How could I grow? How could I change and speak up, and also help make that a better place for others? My supervisor was inviting me to change. And questions are also gifts that we can pass on to others. So my 18-year-old was recently sharing with me that she often feels overlooked by a particular teacher who seems to give priority to male voices in class discussion. And so one night we were walking the dog, and I brought up this question, this much-loved question: what would it be like if you shared with your teacher about your experiences of feeling ignored when you raise your hand in class? Now, we can ask the questions. It doesn't mean that the other person will follow suit. My daughter told me point blank that she would never do that. But we can still plant the seed. Stories are another vehicle for change. Currently, we are reading the UUA's Common Read, as I mentioned, Mistakes and Miracles, by Nancy Palmer Jones and Karen Lynn. The book focuses on stories of 5 congregations and their journeys in the work of dismantling systemic oppression and racism. The importance of hearing stories, especially stories from other perspectives, is underlined by an account by Rusty Vaughn, who is a member of UU Annapolis. When the congregation is engaged in the curriculum Building the World We Dream About, Rusty has the following aha moment, and I'm going to read in a short account from the book. He says, "We're about 6 months into the program. On a Sunday afternoon, we're about halfway into the 2 hours, and all of a sudden, something snaps. I have a come to Jesus moment. Everyone stops talking. Everyone is looking at me. One of the facilitators looks concerned and says, "What's wrong? Do you want to talk about it?" I say, "I can't explain it, but I just got it." I had listened to just enough stories and heard a number of perspectives, not from African Americans, but also from Puerto Ricans and Asian Americans. Finally, I got it. I have to say, that was the beginning of the rest of my life. As Rusty so poignantly shares, stories can be pivotal to our understanding of the work that we need to do to counter racism and oppression. Reverend Melissa Carville-Zemer says, "Building multicultural, anti-racist, beloved community is heart work. And stories speak to the heart." I have come to believe that most, if not all, of our stories have underpinnings of the white supremacy culture that we are trying to move to grow away from. And while I have shared my story, part of my story of swimming with you, that story is also set in the context where systemic racism was present. Even as a 7-year-old, I was well aware of the privilege that my status coming from a white middle-class family afforded me. I was also the child of a graduate student at the University of Chicago, and there was a whole nother tension there with its surrounding neighborhood. I was aware of the gentrification that was happening on my block and the racial tension that was very visible in my neighborhood. And yet I wanted to bring swimming today as an analogy. It is something that continues to evolve for me, and over the years it has meant different things. Sometimes it's meant swimming on a team, both age group and masters. Sometimes it has been sitting on the sidelines. This past summer, a friend of mine who's a dancer mentioned in passing to me that swimming to her is the closest movement to dancing, and that she does so when she is unable to dance. And she'll go to the water. That evening, I went to the pool with this idea of what does swimming and what does dancing in the water look like? And it was the end of the season. I remember the pool being very deserted. I think there were a couple racing on one end, and there was a boy in the middle of the pool diving for dive sticks. I swam laps that evening without caring about speed or distance. I thought more about joyously moving through the water. And the boys seemed to be doing the same. We wove our paths in and out of each other. He would dive down for dive sticks, and I would move over a lane so I didn't bump into him. He would burst out of the water exuberantly with the dive sticks. I started to do the same. And then at one point, I turned over on my back, and the sun was about to set. It was beautiful, beautiful night to swim. I stretched my arms and my legs out like a jellyfish. It was a perfect night to dance in the water. The shape of water changes as we change, and we can expand this to the greater world around us. The world changes as we change. So I'm going to leave you with a quote from Gandhi, and this is actually a well-documented quote. In 1913, Gandhi wrote this: "We but mirror the world. All the tendencies present in the outer world are to be found in the world of our body. If we could change ourselves, the tendencies in the world would also change. As man changes his own nature, so does the attitude of the world change toward him. This is the divine mystery supreme. A wonderful thing it is, and the source of our happiness. We need not wait to see what others do." My 7-year-old self reminds me that no one else can tell me what I am capable of doing. We are designed to go beyond our wildest dreams, and the world desperately needs us to do so. May we all learn our own individual dances in that water. Blessed be, may it be so. Amen.